Are you guys ready to go? Awesome. So, yeah, so these guys are, this panel is all about the Macular Collective, which is based in Rotterdam. And we have 3 members of the collective here, Eric Parren, Nicky Assmann, and Joris Strijbos. Hopefully I said that close enough. And the moderator for this panel is Sophie Lamparter, who's actually one of my best friends. She's fantastic. She is the associate director at Swiss Next. She was my favorite moderator from last year, so she's got to step up the game. I think they're going to be doing this sort of like organic format where they'll go through a series of links, and she'll also ask questions. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for audience questions, but we'll see how that goes. But if you haven't, of course you all walked in and you saw all of the kinetic sculptures in the exhibition. And these are the people that made these and brought them, and we shipped them all the way from Rotterdam. So please give a round of applause for the Macular Collective and Sophie.
Thank you so much, Josette. Thank you so much also for putting this up and for running Gray Area. I think it's something that Tiffany said as well before. It's so important that we are bringing disciplines together and that we're starting to talk the same language, especially in this city where art and technology has been a bit disconnected. And I think Gray Area is a center point for bringing that together and also creating understanding. So my name is Sophie. I work at Swissnex. For those who don't know, we're based here in San Francisco, and it's like an innovation outpost for Switzerland. And what we're doing is we're connecting universities, startups, entrepreneurship, innovation, art, and design. And we're doing that most often in an interdisciplinary way. Because most of the time a researcher knows already the researcher living in another country working on the same topic, but maybe he doesn't know that an artist or a designer is thinking about the same questions, or doesn't know that there is already a company solution working on that same idea. And so I'm really, really a believer in interdisciplinary collaboration, in interdisciplinary approaches, bringing disciplines together to really tackle world's problem. I think there is often a risk that we're, as I said before, that we're not speaking the same language, or that we're using different microscope, looking at something and not even understanding that we're actually looking at the same things. And I'm happy that I was chosen to moderate this panel, because I think the Macular Collective does a fantastic job like that. And I think it's exactly what they're about, in my understanding, is staying curious, taking things from all the different disciplines, bringing it together, and also keep asking questions without having the fear that this is maybe a discipline that is not from yours. So bringing these things together. And I'm also happy that they're from the Netherlands, because the Netherlands are supporting artists to travel to the US and making it happen that we can also show their pieces here. And I hope all of you have had time to see some of them. It's the 4 big pieces when you come right in. Maybe I say quickly something about them, so you can talk to them right afterwards. So the main piece when you come in is from Joris. It's Revolt. It's that kinetic sculpture that turns. Then there is Liquid Solid, made by Nicky and Joris together, which is those freezing soap film installation. There's Undulator, made by you, Eric, that is here on the side. And then there is also the Moire studies that you see in the left. So after, I think you guys are staying here till Sunday, there's also a big performance then. So they will be around, chat with them and learn from them. And so that's what I was trying to do with them today. We said like, hey, let's just talk about work. Let's talk about what you made. Let's talk about what inspired you. So we're gonna go with a run through of like experiences and inspiration and your own work. And I think maybe we start with your own work. Whoever wants to kick off.
Sure. So my name is Nicky Assmann, and actually maybe we're all so the Macular Collective is based or is consists of 6 artists, but we all come from the same education, and namely art school called Art Science, and so. we all did the same studies, and we found each other in this communal, how do you say, communal ideas of art, technology, and perception. So one of my works that was made during that studies as a master is called Solace. And if you can run the video, it's a kinetic machine. Just put it on full screen. It's a kinetic machine that consists of a water basin filled with soapy water, and it lifts up a sheet of soap film. So if you know a soap bubble, it's the same, but then a two-dimensional screen. So before art science, I studied film science. So I have a lot in my work this cinematographic reference. I'm very excited about the talk by Jean Youngblood tomorrow, because my thesis was on expanded cinema and synesthesia in art. And so I look a lot at the cinematic apparatus and how you can convey this into a space. So to go out of the cinema and to work with the space. And basically I created this sort of setup, like a theater setup, and to show you this abstract experimental film of soap film. So you look at a sheet of soap film of, I have to calculate in feet, but I think it's 9 feet, 3 by 4 meters, 9 by 9 feet. So it's a reference also to this video, this old video screen. And so the way it's been set up with the space and light, and that's what brings forward these iridescent colors that's inherent of the soap film. And it will display this colorful sheet of soap film, but it also has other aspects, namely it will reflect you. It works as a mirror, basically. So the audience that stands in front of it, now you see only this camera in front of it, but usually there's an audience in front of it, so you will also see this distorted version of yourself. So this is like a continuous installation, and why I like this, or why I chose this installation version, is that I like that you can, it's more free. You can come in, you can choose how long you want to stay there. I put up some benches because some people really wanted to stay for a long time. So it's about creating this meditative space. And also from cinema, the vision is the main sense, but what I would like to do in my work is approach all the senses. So it's about this sensorial experience. And I think you also noticed this in the exhibition. Maybe the dominant one is vision, but in this installation, like before you enter the space, you will smell the soap. So also I try to approach all these other senses, also the tactile sense. The humidity is raised to keep these soap films up. And so it's a very like glam space. And you're being touched by light. So all these metaphorical thinkings about working differently with the space and the senses and the sensorial experience.
Can you maybe say something how this work led to the work that we have in the show now?
So one of the works is called Liquid Solid. After this experiment, I had read somewhere. So one of like how I work is that I'm inspired by science and by scientific research and natural phenomena. And I think this is also for the rest of us the same. And I had read somewhere that you can freeze soap bubbles. So I thought, okay, I can do the same with the soap film. But you need minus 30 degrees Celsius. I don't know what this is in Fahrenheit, but very cold.
Really cold. Really cold.
And so somebody suggested to me this, I had proposed this so in the collective we work together, there's room for collaborations, that's the main part. So we talked about doing this project together, and somebody suggested that there's this art science residency, artists in residence, in the north of Finland, in the Arctic region, where it gets this cold during the winter. And they invite artists to come work and collaborate in the lab with the scientists or with the Arctic landscape. And so we went there and started to research the cinematic qualities of a freezing soap film. So the film you see here, the installation is it's a video installation of an 80-minute loop. The first part is still very colorful, and you recognize the soap film. But you see that the viscosity has changed. So that's around -6 degrees. And what happens is the process just slows down. So like normally a soap foam would last a minute, this lasted like 30 minutes. So we took like a short example or 15-minute take of that. That you slowly see the soap, because of gravity, it goes down, and it slowly starts to freeze, and the viscosity becomes more syrupy instead of fluid. And then the second part where you see the crystals is where it's actually like close to -25 degrees Celsius, and then the iridescent aspect of the soap film is completely gone, and it starts to crystallize and freezes quite quickly. And then with that we made a soundtrack, because like we don't explain what the process is. We just we make a composition with the images and make our own soundtrack. So the end result is not to demonstrate this scientific process, but just to make an artwork with it.
Yeah, maybe you want to show your work that you brought with you, Joris?
I can talk a bit about the Revolt piece. Let me just see where it is. Or no, maybe this is a good way to start. Like, this is a work I did some time ago. It's called Phases Order. I'll play the video. You can see what it is. It's a kinetic light sculpture, and it consists of 96 panels that move. You'll see it in a minute. And the idea for this came from the swarming phenomena that you see with birds. So I was looking at these patterns, and I wanted to capture that in a mechanical sculpture. So here you see how they move, and there's kind of this algorithm going on that they are looking at each other, and they move along that way. And what I like about this is that when people see it, they have the feeling that they are looking at this kind of natural phenomena, but it's like all completely artificial materials. And I think that's the part where I'm interested in where this border is between the natural and the artificial, and how these have a certain relationship. Yeah, maybe it's good to also see the Revolt piece moving. I think maybe people saw it here in the front. It's the rotating LED installation. Just gonna see where that is in the computer. So it's this piece. And for this, the idea was to make a visual music piece. We were interested in the idea of making a music for the eye. So we work with rhythm and intensity to create this kind of abstract experience. And the second part is that we wanted to, like, we worked before a lot with images generated in the computer and using projectors, but we wanted to try to create some kind of voluminous screen that you really have the feeling of this kind of 3D shape that works in the space.
I think a lot of the work that we do is related to cinema, but moving it into a different space. And I think with Revolve, it's trying to create a cinematic experience, but making that as a physical object. Can you show the Undulator piece? So my work in the exhibition is sort of reducing cinema to its basic qualities, light and a screen, and then introducing an element of physics in there. So there's a kinetic element to it. It's a light source that projects color and gradients onto a moving reflective surface, and what you see on the screen is basically the physics that happen of the light source being refracted from the source. And so part of it is about perception also. I think in Revolve, the flickering of the image, you get these after images, and in my piece there's also a lot of flickering where your perceptual system is being pushed to the limits. And I think a lot of the works in our collective are about trying to push your perceptory system or mess with your perceptory system to give you an experience that you would not easily have otherwise, right?
That's also why a lot of these works are hard to film, because you have to, it's about this physical experience. Also in that sense, like what you say about, we all grew up in this both analog and then digital world, and I think a lot of our work is returning to this physical component and physical experience, and the same as for leaving the cinema, leaving the screen, and trying to make this space, this environment that you can experience with your whole body.
Yeah, I think what's also something that I've seen is always this relationship between a natural phenomena and the machine one, an artificial one. And I thought something very interesting you told me yesterday is that a lot of people look at his piece and actually think it's some sort of algorithm that is producing the images. So we are already expecting some sort of more technology behind certain things. And it's very similar with your work. Maybe you can speak a bit about that.
Well, yeah, it's a funny thing that when people see that work, I have gotten the question pretty often, so what kind of fluid dynamic simulation are you using, or what kind of, and then I explain to people what it is, and they still don't understand that there's no software involved, basically. And it's very strange that people are conditioned to just think, oh, it's, you know, art and technology, there should be some kind of high-tech software involved, but I really love the idea of just using simple means to get to a natural, organic result.
I think in that sense, we're not using a technology to promote the technology or to like. It's like a tool for us.
Yeah.
It's like how a painter would use a paintbrush. It just gives us more possibilities, but the main goal is to make an artwork that can be experienced, and that it should never be about the technology itself.
Yeah, maybe Joris, you can show Gut Feeling. So on Sunday night, we're doing a program of experimental films that are made by us and by other Dutch filmmakers, and we're doing also 2 live audiovisual performances. And the piece that I'm doing is called Gut Feeling, and I created this piece while I was at UCLA, and I stumbled into their nano labs, the California Nanosystems Institute, where I saw all these crazy machines. And one thing that hit me is that scientists are like us. They don't know what they're doing. They're looking for something. They don't always know exactly what they're looking for, and they're hacking these machines together to find something new. And I really like that. And so one of my interests, like visual perception, they had these amazing microscopes there. And so I started chatting with one of the scientists there who ran one of the labs, and I convinced him to let me use his microscope. And I ended up collaborating with a synthetic biologist who provided me with genetically modified bacteria. And so I created a film, and it's also a live performance that is based on movement and growth experiments with these E. coli bacteria. And so that is, you know, there's a lot of sort of high-tech stuff involved in that, but the end result, if you'll come on Sunday, is really meant as an artwork, a perceptual experience. Yeah.
Can you speak a bit about how the reaction of the researchers were to your work, or your questions that you asked, and how were they involved, or how was the exchange?
So the person that I worked with who ran the lab, at UCLA, there's this Art Sci Center, so there is this setup for artists and scientists to collaborate, and he's one of the main people who's involved with that. So he was really open to the idea, and he was really encouraging me to use the lab. One of the things was I could only use the lab when there wasn't any research being done, so I was there usually from like 12 at night till 6 a.m. So that was that was a funny experience.
And alone?
Alone, all by myself, yes. But then I also encountered some scientists where I tried to sort of explain what I wanted to do, but it was really hard to convey what my goal was. They were interested in having me there, and they were happy to have me around and explain everything to me, but I did feel that it was difficult to have the exact conversation that I wanted to have with them about what my work was about. It was, well, I can't say I totally understood exactly what they were doing, but it was easy to talk with them about their work, but the other way around, I had a bit more of a difficulty communicating that. When I show the piece, I've had very interesting conversations with people who work in the field of microscopy or synthetic biology, genetic engineering. So in the end, the piece works. But while working in the lab, you're out of place a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it takes a while until you start speaking the same language
Yeah,
again.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We've done several projects together. Maybe you're familiar with the Artist in Residency program at CERN. I think it's a fantastic art science program, and it's a very small program, so they're very carefully choosing artists that are asking or working on specific fields and merging them with the scientists. And they also published the so-called manifesto for art and science collaboration. And I remember it quite well. It had these 3 things that art and science should not be. And it said, first, art science shouldn't be, visualization shouldn't be for communicating science. Second, the scientific process shouldn't be just about the process that the artist is using. And the third one, it's a problem when the science becomes the art. So when you just do a big microscopic picture, blow it up and hang it into a gallery. And I don't know, maybe you can comment a bit on that or for your experiences, how to really make a project where both sides are influence or interact or play with each other. So you're pushing both fields a bit further.
I think it's really difficult, actually. It happens a lot that it either becomes an illustration for the scientist or the artist just takes something and doesn't really respect the science or do something with it. I think for a lot of us, though, we sort of look at what is happening in science and then create our own idea of what that means and kind of run with it.
But this works for me really well because I start with something with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever, or just one fact, which grasps me and tickles me to continue in that field, and then this allows for such a freedom that I do things that scientists would probably never do because they already know about limitations, certain limitations of the material, and I just don't have that knowledge, so I'll just start to work and play. So I think this freedom is very important in creating the artwork, and that you are not limited by this already knowledge of limitations of the materials and just find new entries in the work. I think that can also be a mutual thing for the scientists, what's interesting. Because you approach things, because you're right, in showing the soap film, a soap film is actually a lot used in science because of looking at turbulence, how turbulence works and fluid dynamics. So yeah, in that sense, that's interesting for them. And I don't know, I think it's difficult to create this mutual collaboration that's really about pushing both in a parallel manner. Yeah, I think CERN is maybe a good example. You need time and money that both parties can really work mutually on it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a bit about other people's work that inspired you in that field of art, tech, and science. I asked them to each one of them choose a piece that we could show here and discuss a little bit what the inspiration is or what they took from it. Who wants to start?
I think it's good to look at this piece by Thomas Wilfred. He's one of the founders of this visual music.
Full screen.
Full screen. So it's a silent piece, and it's basically there are light sources, and he uses all these mechanical rotating devices to create this abstract light work. One of his ideas was he created this Lumia, and it was kind of this small television scale object with the idea that people could have that in their home just to look at it in the night instead of like looking television.
This was at the time when television wasn't super common yet, and so he thought, oh, instead of television, everybody's going to have this light art device in their house, and people are going to sit on the couch and watch light shows, you know. I love that idea.
Yeah, it would be a lot better, I guess.
Yeah. And so, actually, Undulator is heavily inspired by Thomas Wilfred's work. I was actually building myself a small Lumia box, and sort of this is an accidental result of me messing around with the materials to build that kind of stuff.
I think these accidents and this playing and experimenting, it's a big part of our work. Just playing with materials, with certain ideas, concepts, and by playing, finding out their qualities and characteristics and aspects. Yeah.
So mostly more like stumble overing it than rather looking for something that you already have in mind. Yeah.
And again, this is cinema, but it's an extremely physical type of cinema, you know, built out of lights and moving objects. So, from when is this? This is like 30, 40, something like that.
Maybe the video says it.
I think this is one of his latest. Yeah, so 48. Yeah. So for me, that's also one of the things that I'm really interested in. Is like we work in art and technology, and there's this idea like, oh, we're doing the newest, latest thing, but actually there's a really big history to all of this, and I think it's really important to be aware of that. And you know,
there's also a lot of forgotten technology that's very interesting to work with. And I think
it's also going back to these pure things like what's light, how's it working, all these aspects.
Yeah, I think because I like it that that you can work with very simple elements. Like I think most of these work could have also been done like decades ago.
Although the Arduino and Raspberry Pi makes it easier.
No, but technically it's possible to do these things.
Yeah. Maybe you can show the Gordon Pask work.
Is that this one?
So it's kind of hard to find good footage of this, but can you scroll down all the way, or far? So this is in 1968. There was this exhibit in London, Cybernetic Serendipity, that's like, you know, it's famous in media art circles for being one of the first big shows that showed interactive installations and robotics and all that kind of stuff. And this is a piece by Gordon Pask, and I only found out about it recently, what it really does, because it's hard to find good information on it. There's a little bit of information, but so basically this is 5 mobiles. 3 of them are female, 2 of them are male, and they communicate through shooting lights at each other and reflecting them with mirrors. So again, there's lights and mirrors. But this also includes, so Gordon Pask was a cybernetician, and so he was an artist and a scientist at the same time. He was interested in psychology, and so this work is a kinetic sculpture, but the females and males try to learn from each other and try to develop a language. And so there's some computer far off, because at that time there weren't any little Arduinos or Raspberry Pis to stick in there. And they start off not knowing about each other, but through feedback mechanisms, they learn to communicate with each other. And so certain movements start to happen more often because they know that, oh, this way I'll be in touch with that guy, and this way I'll be in touch with this guy. And so this again goes back to like, this is like a very interesting sort of way of networking, I guess, and creating an artificial language. It's a sort of AI stuff, but it's, 1968 piece.
Yeah, but what I really like about this way of working is that you create this generative system which at some point will run by itself by interaction. And for us as humans, it's basically just like this generative composition for lights and movement.
And it becomes this thing where they have their own sort of secret language, and I really like that, where there's a systems to systems language inside there that we as humans, we can look at it and we can enjoy it, but the machines are talking among themselves, and I really love that idea, actually. I think it's very poetic.
And very relevant again today.
Yes,
where
exactly.
We don't even understand
Yes.
what machines are
Yeah.
communicating around us.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with the what's it called? The deep learning.
Deep learning,
that's-
yeah. But
so-
even people using it don't quite know
what's
how
going
it
on.
works.
Yeah.
We show the C piece by Curtainschlager. So when I was talking about expanded cinema, this for me is like and being immersed in a space. This for me was like the main example that I experienced, being immersed in this whole sensory overload.
I think for all of us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Can,
So
can you
I
describe
think-
what it was for people who haven't been?
So the piece is made by Curtainschlager, who's based in Chicago. He's originally from Austria. He was part of a duo called Granular Synthesis, and then started to work on his own. The piece is an installation that you can experience. It's a space filled with fog, and then you enter actually by holding a rope because you can't see too far. And the space
You can
is-
see about like 5 inches, 10
Yeah.
inches in front of
and
you.
you're there with many people, but you don't know exactly where they are. Although you have this sense of
Presence of other people.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so what's on is a composition for stroboscopic lights and pulse lights. And what starts to happen is because your eyes are the fog is so thick, the stroboscopic lights will start to create hallucinatory patterns in your eyes, in your vision. And this is very intense because you're already in a bit closed off space because of the fog, and then these very intense patterns start to visualize in your perception in front of you. And it's so you are completely disoriented, and you can wander through the space. And yeah, I don't. What happened to me is that maybe you can show the film that people, because with all these things, it's really hard to play the
but
video.
it's actually like erasing the space.
Yeah.
It's like he's just taking the space away by blurring your
It's really
vision.
hard to film such.
And
You can't film this. So what he did was make the video with where people explain how they experienced it.
There's also a sound component to it, right? Yeah. So there's a and
Very
it's-
present.
Yeah, it's a very specific sound composition that's also pulsing, and the flickering light and the pulsing sound sort of get your brain waves going in a very intense way, I guess.
I don't know how I want to word it.
It's really hard to say something smart about something that's so like purely sensual.
It's just light.
I know, but
All the images are what you like.
create.
Yeah. That was the most insane thing I've ever been a part of.
At first, it was extremely uncomfortable. I really wanted out.
The anxiety was
Almost scary.
He opens the first door and it's just like boom.
Once your visibility starts going, you're kind of like, okay, whoa, what's happening?
You don't even know where you are. You lose your sense of space, time, and motion. I mean, I didn't even know I was in there for 20 minutes. I would have guessed like 2 minutes.
It did feel a little bit like death. Like if you don't have a body, is this what your existence is like?
If you went to heaven, like it felt like you would be like entering heaven.
I've never felt like that ever.
That like happens so purely in your own brain that it's impossible to even compare it to anybody else's.
I'm just. I think we got the point, right?
Yeah. If you ever get the chance to see it, go see it, because it's amazing. It's really good.
Yeah, maybe we can, we only have 5 minutes left. Maybe we can talk a little bit what's coming up or any projects that you have in mind. I know you're dreaming about doing something here in the US, something larger as a collective.
Yeah, I think part of this tour is to research the ideas of creating a new sort of research lab, which would work with a mixture between new media art and different kinds of land art. We got interested in this idea of using green energy sources like sun and wind power, kind of harvest that and use that in setting stuff in motion or using it for audiovisual sculptures.
Do you want to show Isoscope, maybe?
Yeah, because I did one work which is kind of recent, and it's this installation. This was done in Norway, right in the top of in Kirkenes. It's commissioned work by this project called Dark Ecology, and it's these 12 wind turbines, and they will rotate, they will generate energy, and they will use this energy for sound and light composition. Inside the units, there's also a light sensor, so they will influence each other in the way they produce their sound.
So this actually goes back to the Gordon Pask work so directly. I really like that actually. The 1968 piece has so much of these elements in it.
I can play a bit so you can see it functioning.
So this was in November, eh? And in November in the Arctic region, the sun doesn't rise anymore. So you have a polar night, and which means that there's a little bit of twilight, but the most of the day it's dark. And so it really felt like this group of, to me, it felt like a group of aliens landed on this mountain and were like trying to communicate either with each other or with us, and it was a really bizarre experience.
It's like one of the main points of departure was like I was invited there to just enjoy the first journey that they organized and to just get inspired by the region. And we saw the aurora there, and it came to mind to just like, how would it be if there would be some kind of man-made phenomena somewhere in these mountains there, that you would have like functioning there under circumstances. Like, so it's wind driven, but also it wouldn't work if it would be light or if there was no wind. So it's like this phenomena that you can experience only when everything is in the right order.
So you need a natural phenomenon amplified by human creation and the machine. Yes.
Yeah. And
yeah, beautiful.
What I think is really beautiful about it also, like, you can just leave that there and nobody has to watch it, and it can just be there and live, and I really like that.
That's also the goal, to create this land art piece that you can just go and is self-sustainable, and
So yeah, by using green energy to create a piece somewhere, like we were thinking out in Utah in the desert or in Joshua Tree to research the possibilities of setting up a man-nature machine that lives there, and you know, you can go visit it if you want, but you know, it just lives there. Yeah, so that's coming up. We're going to go to Joshua Tree in next week, somewhere like that. Yeah.
Do some research, to talk to people.
Yeah. Great. We're excited to see what's coming out of that. So yeah, the three of them are here till Sunday. Talk to them, and also sign up for the performance on Sunday and the screening. I think it will be very fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
for
coming all the way.